It's just past 10 o'clock, and I just got done for the day. Those two new calves right there, those are two. I brought home 8 calves today. I sold 4, I bought 8, and I also brought home a $650 check. Y'all see that that big old white heifer back there too? And she's one of the new ones. This little brown calf right here, it's hard to see, but he's a new one. I brought home 8 new calves today. I did bring home 8 new calves. Let's see if I can. I'm gonna just go ahead and turn my light off. Y'all can still see him. Yep, I sold 4 and I bought 8. There were a lot of calves today. President Trump said that he's going to lower the cost of beef, and the price of feeder cattle went down, and it scared a lot of people. This is something, but the thing about the cattle market is that there was just so much going on at the cattle market. It was kind of I had a feeling, okay? I had a feeling one way or another this thing was going to start to come down. And my whole thing about the president is that I always support the president. I don't care who the president is. Even when Joe Biden was president, I supported Joe Biden. I did think that it was not good to, I thought he was senile. That's what I thought about Joe Biden. I always support the president of my country. All right, I always support the president of America. If you don't support your president, if you don't support the president, I mean that's very unpatriotic. I mean, even Joe Biden, I even supported Joe Biden. I didn't say anything bad about Joe Biden. This whole thing about people trying to kill politicians and stuff, it's ridiculous, right? I don't agree with it. I don't care who the president is. I support the president. And one way or another, I figured that the price of beef was going to come down. And there was just so much, everybody was running into the cattle market. And, oh my God, maybe, this thing goes to the moon. And, it's not going to the moon, okay? Like, when I take a look at the cattle market, I actually like it this way. Things have just kind of gone back to normal. The cattle business is not exactly a business, and I talk about this. The cattle business is not a business that people go running into to make large sums of money. All right, it's just and this whole thing about people running into the market and just buying up calves all over the place for astronomical prices. It's hard to run a business. It's hard to run a commodity business when people are just going absolutely nuts for these cattle. Okay, people were paying people were just paying a lot of money for these calves, and I feel like everything just kind of went back to normal. This whole thing, and my whole take on the commodity market, my whole take on the cattle market is that downwards momentum is going to cause a lot of people to lose their shirts. All right, downwards momentum is going to cost a lot of people. Is going to be what causes a lot of people a lot of problems. The price of cattle is irrelevant. What's going to cause people a lot of problems is the downwards momentum, and the cattle market dropping by $10 in a day. It scared a lot of people. All right, and who knows, this whole thing, it might continue, but the cattle business is not some fashionable business, right? I talk about the cattle business. It's not some, I felt like a lot of people, when I took a look at it, there were a lot of people that were running into the cattle market to scrape some money off the market, and and just see if they can make whatever, and all these people were running into the cattle market all of a sudden, and it was just getting kind of nuts. And so the way that I see it, everything just kind of went back to normal. It kind of just snapped everybody out of it. It kind of got rid of and I'm glad it did. It kind of snapped everybody out of it. The cattle market is not going straight up and to the right. That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Okay. Unless there was something like some crippling inflation, right? If there was some massive level of inflation, but if there was some massive level of inflation in the commodity market, it would also be hitting the grain market, right? If commodities in just the broader term were inflating, then the grain market would be inflating as well. So I feel like everything just kind of went back to what it was. It's like the cattle market, but without the excitement. Excitement isn't good for business. A whole bunch of excitement isn't good for business. I mean, it's kind of cool, I guess. I mean, it's kind of cool every once in a while to go to the sale barn and just be like, my God, people are paying $1,600 for a 200-pound calf, and people are paying $7 a pound for a 225-pound calf. Every once in a while, I guess that's exciting, right? I mean, it's exciting. But, if that's happening like for weeks and weeks and weeks on end for like 3 months in a row, it's just kind of just whatever, right? I mean, and I feel like everything just kind of went back to what it was. All right. And, and I like it, I like it like this. It gets rid of the people who are just frantically buying cattle because they think that the cattle prices are just going to keep just skyrocketing upwards. All right, because that's not what's gonna happen, and but I mean, it's whatever, right? I'm not a malicious person. It's a free country. You can do whatever you want, and I guess it was exciting for a bit, and I feel like with everything that happened, I feel like it just kind of put everything back into place, and it just feels more like a regular cattle market to me. As of today, when I went to the sale barn today, it just felt like I was just at the cattle market, and it wasn't real exciting, right? I mean, but the cattle were selling for commodity prices. Cattle of all weight classes were selling for commodity prices, and that's fantastic. Nobody was, they weren't just bidding up every single calf on the market, just going ham on everything. It wasn't like that, and so that's the market makes more sense the way it is now. All right. And who knows, right? If this whole thing turns around and the cattle market just continues to climb higher, then I guess more people will come running in. But, President Trump did say that he is looking to lower the price of beef. And when he started his term, he said that he was going to lower the price of gasoline, and he did lower the price of gasoline. All right. He lowered the price of gasoline very significantly. All right. He did say he was going to lower the price of gasoline, and he lowered the price of gasoline. So I would take his word for it. If he says he's going to lower the price of beef, he is probably going to lower the price of beef. All right. And so a lot of people are scared. I think a lot of people are scared, and downwards momentum is going to cause a lot of problem for people. All right. Downwards momentum is going to be what causes people to lose money. A lot of people, a lot of people in the cattle market, if they buy cattle, a lot of people, if they buy cattle, right, and by the time they sell the cattle, if the price of the feeder cattle have gone down 5%, I mean, it's effectively you're effectively doomed, right? For most people, that's how the cattle market works out. And in terms of the average cattle market, like if we're going to talk about the cattle market in terms of a broader sense, fed cattle, right? Like the cattle feeding business. The cattle feeding business, most of the time, these people make about $50 to $100 an animal. All right. In terms of the cattle feeding business, most of these people make $50 to $100 an animal. I've heard that profits in the cattle feeding business have been as high as like $250 to $400 an animal right now. As of recently. And but normally it's about $50 to $100. All right. And this is also, the whole thing about the cattle feeding business is that the large scale cattle feeders, there, I mean, we're talking about commercial scale. Okay. I mean, these people, if they got 50, 100,000 animals, 50,000 animals, and they're feeding all these cattle. And if you make $50 on 100,000 cattle, right? And you run 3 or 4 set of cattle a year. If you got 100,000 cattle at a time, and you run 3 or 4 set of cattle a year, I mean, you're running like 400,000 cattle a year, right? And if you make $50 an animal, you do pretty good, right? And you got all your equipment and you got your employees and whatever. You still probably, you still make some money, right? And that's the regular kind of cattle situation. And in terms of a normal cattle situation for me, like in terms of a normal situation for me, I bring them in very light. I bring in animals that effectively nobody wants to raise. All right, the big feed yards don't want 200-pound animals. All right, raising 200-pound animals is very rough. It's very difficult. It's not something that you just go and do. It's not like raising a whole bunch of 500-pound animals to 800-pound animals. All right, a lot of these 200-pound cattle is very rough. All right, and it takes a long time to get them to 800 pounds. You don't feed them for 3 or 4 months and then sell them. And so, most of the time, but to me, it doesn't matter. All right, because my whole thing about the way that I structure my business, when I show you how I structure my business, is that my margins are so high that it doesn't matter. Okay, it's just me. I don't have any expenses, hardly any expenses. I live in a trailer house. My truck is paid for. I have a tractor. That's the one piece of machinery that I have. When I grow grass, I don't even bale it. All right, I just graze it. All right, and if I feel like I can make money on hay, then I'll grow a bunch of hay and I'll sell it, right? And then I'll just take that money and I'll buy myself some grain, all right, or whatever, all right? If I, whatever, I don't have any employees. I don't have any machinery other than my tractor. My truck is paid for, and I will be buying myself a new truck here very soon. Oh yeah, but I was gonna talk about this. Yeah, but my margins are so high. The amount of money that I make in terms of my expenses is so high that it doesn't matter. I'm serious. I'm not, like when I talk about this stuff, I'm not like being a doofus about it. I'm not being a malicious person about it. I'm not lying, right? it just is what it is. And the way that I describe money is that whatever your expenses are, if you can pay for all of your expenses, if you make enough money while you're sleeping to pay for all of your expenses, you probably are doing good with money. That's how I would, granted that the condition is met that you did not sell your soul to the devil for money, and you're not like YOLOing something, all right? You're not like in some obscure asset. You're not like YOLOing an option contract or something like that. Granted that you actually have a good asset, right? And you understand your asset and you're making a return on your asset, and that return on your asset while you're sleeping is producing you enough money to cover all of your expenses for the day, right? That's how I see it, all right? If you're YOLOing weekly option contracts, that doesn't count, all right? If you've sold your soul to the devil for money, that doesn't count, all right? It needs to be a good asset. It needs to be a stable asset, and it needs to make you a positive return, and that positive return needs to be enough money while you're sleeping to pay for all of your expenses while you're awake. And if that is happening, then you're doing well with money. All right, that's what I mean by you're probably doing well. Granted that you didn't do something, pathetic or malicious. All right, and the thing that I was going to talk about today, I remembered, was that so this month I sold 4 and I bought 12. Right, for the month I sold 4 and I bought 12, and still for the month my debt to equity ratio has still gone down. My debt to equity ratio has still gone downwards. I sold 4. I made enough money to buy 8, and I took a loan for 4 more. That's 12, right? So that's me just reinvesting my earnings and then taking a loan against my earnings. That's all I did. I didn't even leverage against my other 35 animals. So how a couple of weeks ago I said that my debt to equity ratio for just my cattle herd is 80%. It's still falling. It's still going downwards. Even though I took a loan for 4 more animals, it's probably gone down another 10%. I may be at 70% now. I may be at 70% now. Who knows? I haven't taken a look at it. All right, not who knows. I should know. But I haven't taken a hard look at it, and I'll figure it out. But you can actually see the cattle are walking around this way right now. The new calves are. They're walking around the little field, and they're walking around this way right now, so you can see them. I brought home 8 of them, and you can tell that they're kind of big. I did go ahead and buy some bigger calves this time, just because I was flush with money. I made a large sum of money, and I was like, it's whatever. And I bought I actually bought the average weight at 290. So I went over the 250. I brought home I brought him home a little bit bigger this time. I brought him home at an average weight of 290, and I sold 4. I bought 8, and I still came home with like $657 and change. And so I still have a few $100s left over. And so I did buy him a bit bigger this time. But I sold 4. I bought 8. I took a loan for 4 more, and I used my debt to buy 4 more. So I sold 4 and I bought 12. And even though I sold 4 and I bought 12, my debt to equity ratio on my cattle herd has still gone downwards, because I have not leveraged against the unrealized gains of my other 35 animals, 34 animals, whatever it may be. I think it's 34. I didn't take a loan. I didn't touch any of that money. The 7 animals of unrealized gains, I didn't even leverage against any of that. So I sold 4. I made enough money to buy 8, and I took a loan for 4 more. That's just me leveraging against just my earnings. So I sold 4. I bought 12, and my debt to equity ratio is probably, I haven't taken a hard look at it, but it's probably, and also I brought home some bigger calves this time. I didn't bring him home at 200. I brought him home at effectively 300, 290. The average weight of the animal that I brought home today was 290. And so I did even buy one 450-pound heifer. That big white heifer, she's not 450, she's 415 pounds. And I do have a big Hereford out there too, a big Hereford heifer. That's 395 pounds. And so I did buy 2 400-pound animals. And so, I did end up just buying bigger calves, just because I was flush with money. And those calves, I can turn them around faster, right? I mean, they'll be ready for market in maybe 5 months. And so, it won't take me 8 months to raise them. It'll take me 5. So, yeah, that has a monetary value as well. And so, with everything going on, I did do, my debt to equity ratio still went downwards. My debt to equity ratio still went downwards, even though I sold 4 and I bought 12. And this is also what I mean by it is, and when I talk about this stuff, I'm not being a doofus about it. It just is what it is. I don't know what to tell you. If you want to get in the cattle business, if you want to see what it's like to be in the cattle business and go in the cattle business, nobody's stopping you. It's a free country. Have fun. I sincerely hope and pray that you make it. I sincerely hope and pray that you do well for yourself. The world needs more cattlemen. The number of cattlemen in this country has been going downhill for decades, all right, since like the 1970s. The number of cattlemen in this country has been going downwards, all right, and there are countries like Brazil, right, and China and Australia and Brazil, China, Australia, Argentina, that are ramping up their beef production, and the beef production in America is set to fall. And if we don't have any cattlemen, then we're not going to have any we're not going to have anybody to run the cattle, right? And so, if you go into the cattle business and you're successful, I'm very happy for you. I make enough money to where it doesn't matter. My whole thing about making money is that one of the big factors of making money is, like, if you take a look at my situation, if I ended up with 3 baby mamas, right, and I started drinking on the weekends and gambling on the weekends, if I started drinking and gambling on the weekends, and I went and bought myself a Lamborghini, I would not have any money. I wouldn't have any money, right? The whole thing about there's a big part of making money about just not having problems. And even if you just do decent, a lot of people don't think about the idea of just doing well over a long period of time. A lot of people don't think about that. What if you just did well over a long period of time, right? A lot of people, it's like, and it doesn't have to be a Lamborghini, right? It could be a boat. Right, like, if you went and got a raise at work and you bought yourself a boat, that's not good, right? If you don't have an investment account, and you bought yourself a boat and a bigger house, or you bought yourself a car, a nicer car, a boat, and it doesn't even have to be a boat. It could just be that you bought yourself a nicer car and you bought yourself a nicer house, right? And if you do that, I mean, then you're not going to make it. I mean, it's the same. And here's the thing. It's the same thing for me. If I got 3 baby mamas, or not even 3 baby mamas, if I got into if I got divorced one time and I bought myself a Lamborghini and I bought myself a nicer house, if I bought myself a better car and a nicer house and I got divorced one time, right? Then, got whatever, it doesn't have to be, it can be, it's the same thing for me. This is also, this is what I mean by the fundamental idea. It's the same for everybody. If I got divorced one time and I started drinking on the weekends, right? There's a bar, I found a bar down the street that got cute ladies on the weekend, and I go there and I hang out on the weekends, and next thing you know, I got myself a baby mama, right? And I bought myself a Lamborghini, right? Or whatever, right? Then I would have no money either, right? I would have no money either, right? At that point, I would have lost all my money too. It's the same thing for everybody, right? And this is also why I say it's so important to focus on your business. A lot of people, one of the things that I see when it comes to business, and we just have to be honest about it, a majority of people who are in business end up failing. We have to accept that. It is what it is. I'm not making it up, right? A majority of people who get into business either barely make enough money to get by, which is also failing, or they just flat out lose everything and then they fail. All right. A majority of people, it's not like you went and started yourself a business and then you went on some magical journey and everybody got a participation trophy and now everybody who started a business is running a business is making a lot of money. A majority of people who run businesses, a majority of people who start businesses end up failing. It just is what it is. And it's like if you're not focused on your business, then you're not gonna make it. Like if you're running a business, if your focus is not the business, then you're not gonna make it. All right, I would be willing to bet, and if I took that bet with everybody, on a 3-to-1 odds, I would have made a massive sum of money. I would, but if your focus is not your business, then you're not gonna make it. It just is what it is. I mean, if you take your money and you go and do something else with it, like buy yourself a nice house or buy yourself a nice car, you're doomed. If you don't, my whole thing about money, and like when I see money, and why do I put such an emphasis on assets, right? Is because assets are equitable. And like if we take a look, let's just say that, my whole thing is I put all of my money back into my business. I just do it. I don't whatever. Oh my God. Well, if I just gave myself an extra $5,000, then I don't, and it wouldn't matter, right? I mean, whatever, right? Instead of buying 12, I just bought 8 and I just gave myself the $5,000. Oh my God. Well, what if I just, gave myself the $5,000 and, and I still could grow my business. I could still, invest 200% of my income. Oh, that's also the thing. Right now, I'm investing 300% of the money that I make. I am investing 300% of if I make $1, I invest 3. And my balance sheet is still, my debt to equity ratio is still falling. That's another thing that I wanted to bring up. I am investing 300% of the money that I make into my business. It's like 250% because, whatever. My mortgage is $1,500. All right. And so, it's whatever, right? And I got expenses, right? I got my electricity bill. I got my water bill. So, realistically, we're talking about me investing about 250% of the money that I make. I am investing 250% of the money that I make into my business, and my debt to equity ratio is still falling. That's one of my big problems. That's also what I mean by I make such a large amount of money, it is becoming difficult for me to invest it. That's legitimately what I mean. I am investing 250% of the money that I make back into my business, and I am still reducing my debt to equity, my debt to equity on just my cattle herd. And I'm not leveraged against hardly any of my cash flow. And when I talk about leveraging against my cash flow, right? The idea of leveraging against my cash flow is that my business does not have stocks, but it does produce money on a monthly basis, right? And I do have assets. So think about it like this. If I went to the bank and I said, hey, banker, give me a loan for 100 grand. And the banker gave me a loan for 100 grand and they charged me, let's say, they charged me whatever, 6.5% interest. If they charged me 6.5% interest on $100,000, right? That would be $6,500 a year, right? So, I mean, we're talking about maybe $510, $515 a month, right? I mean, why would I care about $515? And let's say they add whatever, 3% principal. What does it even matter? That's another $3,000. So it'd be whatever, right? It'd be $10,000 a year. So now we're talking about $900 a month. I don't care about, and there are many ways to take leverage, right? I mean, I could take a loan to buy a new truck, right? And whatever, if I took a loan to buy a new truck and I traded this one in, I wouldn't even be paying $700 a month for it. So what does it matter, right? My whole thing is I'm just going to buy what I need. That's my whole thing. I'm not going to buy what I want, because wanting to buy something is a waste of time. If I legitimately started to go into this situation where I was going to think about the things that I want to buy, it would turn into this endless cycle of me looking for things to buy, right? And that's a horrendous waste of time. So I figured the best way for me to do this is to just buy what I need. And I don't need a bigger truck right now, so I'm not going to buy it. I do have a large amount of money left over, but my goal is to put all of the money back into my business. When I take a look at me investing my money back into my business, I even bought a couple of bigger calves today. I paid $1,600 for one of them, and I paid $1,400 for another one of them. All right, the smaller ones, I paid about $1,100 a piece. I could have bought another animal, right? I came home with a $650 check. I still got to pay for my grain. But I'm not worried about the grain. At the end of the month, they'll give me my invoice. They'll send me my invoice, and I can pay for it. And if it comes down to it, I'll just sell one of my big animals, and I'll whatever. I'm not worried about it. If I legitimately need money, I can sell one of my cattle. That's the whole thing about having investments, right? If I legitimately need money, I can leverage against my assets, or I can just liquidate and use the money, right? I mean, I'm not concerned about it. And that's also the thing, right? And I talk about this, like, if I legitimately had problems, if I genuinely had problems, right? I mean, it would cost me everything, right? Chances are, I would be selling my cattle to pay for things, right? And, that's not good, right? But it's the same thing for me. It's not, it's not like I'm just bashing people. If I found a bar down the street and whatever, and I saw a bunch of cute girls over there, and so I saw a bunch of cute ladies over there, and so I went to that bar and I started hanging out there on the weekend. And I was looking for whatever, right? I was looking for a woman, and I ended up with a baby mama, and I whatever, right? And it turns out she's not a spectacular person, or maybe, who knows? I mean, maybe she is a spectacular person, but she's probably not. And so if she's not a spectacular person, and next thing I don't have a cattle business, or my cattle business is going nowhere, and I'm using every dollar that I have. I'm not focused on the business, et cetera, right? You got to be focused on the business, and that's one of the things that I do with my life that get me very far ahead. And my whole thing about money is I put it all into my business. I just put it all back into my business. I put all of my earnings back into my business, because my whole thing is, it's, if I legitimately want to buy something, I'll leverage against my earnings, and I'll buy whatever it is that I want. All right, but I'm not gonna go out of my way to look for things to buy, because then it would just turn into a massive waste of time. It's a waste of time. I can effectively buy anything on the entire planet. So my whole thing is I'm just gonna buy whatever I need. All right, that's my whole thing. I'll just buy whatever I need. When I need a bigger truck and when I need a bigger trailer, I will buy it. When I need a larger field, I will buy it. All right. When I need whatever, if I need it, I'll buy it. But if I don't need it, I don't buy it. And I just reinvest all of my earnings back into my business, okay? I just put all the money back into my business. That's my big idea. That's why I'm not buying stuff, is so that I could just put the money back into my business. And I tell myself, well, if I put the money back into my business, number one, that increases my equity stake. I can leverage against my equity stake. My equity stake is effectively a savings account, and I can leverage against my equity stake, right? and my investment produces me a return. I can just use the return to float the debt. So whenever I need something, I'm just going to buy it. Other than that, I'm just going to put the money all back into my business, because that's what I've reasonably decided is the best thing to do, right? Because it's like if I go and I buy myself a Lamborghini and I buy myself a nice house and whatever, it's not, it's whatever. I don't, none of that stuff means anything to me. And none of that stuff means anything to me. If I need it, I'll buy it. That's how I've reasonably deduced what I will do. If I need it, I'll buy it, and I'm just gonna put all the money back into my business. I'm just focused on my business. I'm growing my business. I did buy 4 and I bought 12. And even though I bought 4 and I bought 12, I made enough money to buy 8. And I also bought a couple of bigger animals. I sold 4, I bought 8 with the money that I made from selling the 4. And I took a loan for 4 more. And even though I sold 4 and bought 12, my debt to equity ratio for the month has still gone downwards. I would reasonably anticipate that I'm sitting at about 70% debt to equity. It may even be as low as it may even be lower than 70%. But my debt to equity ratio for the month still went downwards. All right, it still went downwards, and my herd is expanding, and I'm doing real well for myself. I make enough money to where I don't worry about money. I don't worry about money. The extra 8 animals will, I'm not worried about money. I'm honest about it. I'm not worried about money. I make a lot of money. I'm serious. I make a lot of money. I'm not concerned about it. The amount of money that I'm making is going up all the time. I am focused on my business. All right. I am putting all the money back into my business, and it's whatever. If I, and one day if I feel like buying something, whatever, then, I don't know. I don't think about buying stuff, because, thinking about buying stuff is a waste of time. If I need it, I'll buy it. All right. Other than that, I'm just gonna put the money back into my business, and then I'm gonna just grow my business with it. I don't have any concerns for money. I don't have any concerns about money. I do very well for myself. My income, the amount of money that I'm making, is going up all the time. I invested about 250% of my income back into my business. I invested 250% of my income back into my business. I've invested 250% of the money that I make, and my debt to equity ratio is still falling. All right, I may legitimately need to invest about 500%, or I may even need to invest somewhere between 500 and 1,000% of my income. I may legitimately end up in a situation next year, very soon. It may not even be, but even right now, I'm investing 250% of my income, and my debt to equity ratio is still falling down, and I'm putting all this money in the front end of the herd. If I compound this out forward for a little bit, and whatever, in 5, 6, 7 months, I start selling 7, 8 cattle, 10 cattle a month instead of 5. And then I start reinvesting that money into the front end of the herd. I may need to legitimately start investing like 1,000% of my income into my business. And like right now, I am investing 250% of my income into my business, and I'm not concerned about it at all. I'm not worried about it. I invest my money. I match it with the bank's money, and I invest that, and I'm not concerned about it. I don't lose sleep over it. I'm serious. I don't lose sleep over it. I have a bunch of equitable assets, and I have good assets. I didn't buy some wonky asset with the money. I didn't buy some, thing that nobody knows about, and some YOLO asset. I didn't do anything like that. I bought cattle with it. I bought commodity cattle with it at commodity prices. And I'm not concerned. I don't lose any sleep over it. I actually feel good about my financial situation. I actually feel good about my finances. I make a lot of money. I'm very far in the net positive. My debt to equity ratio on my cattle herd is still going downwards. I would anticipate that my debt to equity ratio now is under 70%. I sold 4 and I bought 12. I invested 250% of my income for the month, and I still reduced my debt to equity ratio on my cattle herd. All right, I make a lot of money. I'm serious. It's a lot of money.